Hey guys, in this part of the section, I'm gonna start talking about loops. So this is our first lesson on loops, and we're gonna learn all about them. There are three different types of loops. You get the for loop, you get the while loop, and you get the do while loop. And I'm gonna start with for loops. I'm not sure if I'm gonna include all three of them in one lecture, or I'm going to address one and then the other on the next lecture. We'll see. We'll look at time. Anyway, I already have IntelliJ open, so I'm just going to directly enter IntelliJ because sometimes it takes a long time to boot and it's really annoying. So now we are inside our editor. And what are loops? A loop is something that executes sort of like an instruction as many times as you want. So you can set it to it repeats something. So if you want to print out the word hello 20 times, you don't have to write it like this. You don't have to write system.out.println 20 times. You know, you don't need to say hello. You don't need to do this 20 times. No. And I'm also not going to write it 20 times just to demonstrate to you. So you don't need to do that. There is a way that you can make that whole statement with just 3 lines of code. You know, so I'm going to begin by writing this for, because we're going to begin with for loops. And inside this for statement, we actually have a block. Now in this block, this is where the logic comes in. And we're just going to open up this code block. It should look like something like this. And I'm just gonna write statement or statements. So inside here we should have some logic. So we have an initial value. So this is where we begin. So we initialize an integer value. We call it I sometimes. Sometimes you can call it anything you want. You can call it value or counter or whatever you want. So this is I. I'm going to call it I. And the initial value of this can be anything. This is where we begin counting. So you want to print something as many times starting from whatever value you want to begin it. So if your initial value is 2, then it's going to start counting at 2 up until where you want it to end. So I'm just going to begin at 0. And then we have this semicolon, and then we write our second statement. So this is where we start. This is where we end, guys. So this is where we end. So while I is less than, let's say we want to count up until 7. So while I is less than 7, it's going to check if I, okay, so what's going to happen is that it's going to check if I is equal to 0. Okay, you are setting it. This is your initial value. This is where you begin. So it's going to check if 0 is less than 7. That is true, right? And if that is true, it's going to print out whatever, or it's going to execute the statement once. And now this here we can say I++. So every time that is true, every time the statement is executed, I gets incremented. So now I is going to be equal to 1, right? And then it's going to check if 1 is less than 7. Now that is true, right? 1 is in fact less than 7, and then it's going to increment I to 2, because each and every time the statement is true, it's going to increment, right? And then now I is going to be equal to 3. Is 3 less than 7? True. Increment 3 to 4. 4, and so on up until 7. So now when I is equal to 7, it's going to check, is 7 less than 7? That is false. And then it's going to break out of the loop. It's not going to increment. It's not going to move into this portion of the statement. So here we can actually do something. I'm just going to print out I, just like that. I'm not going to print out hello. I'm just going to print out I. Now I is the actual number. So you're going to see the result of this thing. Oh boy. And also I'd like to point out that this IDE IntelliJ, you need to have a powerful PC in order for things to run smoothly here, because sometimes it's really slow. That's why you see that this IDE is slow when I'm working on it, because my PC is not that powerful. Even though I have a lot of RAM, but I don't have a very powerful CPU. So yeah, those are kind of the issues that I'm facing with this editor. So guys, I encourage you guys to use Eclipse, even though I like this better. But anyway, we get our output here. This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and it stops at 6, because when I was equal to 7, it checked if 7 is less than 7, and then that was false, and then it broke out of the loop. It didn't execute, it didn't print 7. Hope you guys understand that. And while we can do that, we can also just print out our hello statement, right? You can print this out, and it's going to print out hello that many times. It starts off at 0 up until 6, right? So it prints out this 7 times. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is 7 times. And in order to avoid confusion, we can begin this at 1 and end it at while I is less than 8, or while I is less than or equal to 7. All your general your conditions, or your Boolean expressions that you've been writing, they apply to this. So less than or equal to 7. Now it's going to check if 7 is less than or equal to 7, and that's going to be true. And then it's going to increment, and then it's going to check if 8 is less than or equal to 7, which is going to be false, and it's going to break out of the loop. So now when we run this, we are going to get hello the same amount of times, 7 times, because now we begin at 1 and we're ending actually at 7. So now I'm going to concatenate this hello statement with I, so that you can see the actual number next to it. And here we get hello 1, hello 2. We can just add a space here. So we get hello 1 right through 7. We can do a lot of things inside this, guys. There's really no limit. You can do a lot of things. There is a limit, by the way, but I'm just being stupid. Anyway, I'm just gonna show you something. I'm going to initialize a value here. I'm going to initialize a okay, let me just call it counter, and I'm gonna set it equal to 0. No, not counter. We already have counter. I'm just gonna say sum or add to. What am I doing? Add to. Let me say add 2, like as in 2. So this value is 2 right here. And here I want to take the actual index that shows up, and I'm gonna add 2 to that particular index. So I'm going to print this statement. My bad. I'm going to print the statement out like this, and I'm going to say I plus add 2. And I want you to see what's going to happen. We get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because it gets that particular index 1 and it adds 2 to it. Now that's going to be 3, and so on. There's a lot of things. I'm just showing you this so that I can show you that there's a lot of things you can do with loops. And also working with loops, we're going to be working with loops a lot, so you're going to understand later on how they work. And we can also increment by 2 instead of increment by 1. So I'm going to run this, and let's set the limit to 20, and then we're going to print out I. So instead of incrementing, we can add 2 to that number. So remember, I plus equals 2 adds to that particular number. Now it's going to output 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so on. We can do a lot of cool things with loops. And one of the things I want to show you guys is, okay, let me show you this. Let me revert this to increment, and here I want to declare a scanner object, and I'm gonna call it scn, set it equal to, sorry guys, sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me today. Maybe that it's been a while since I've recorded a video and I'm kind of sloppy. So we've declared our scanner object, and we want to ask the user to please enter a word. So you want them to enter a word, and that particular word is going to be printed as many times as that person wants the word to be printed. So I'm going to declare string, and I'm going to call this word is equal to scn dot next line. And here we're going to be prompting the user to enter a word, and then down here we want them to enter, it's going to remove this ln, it's very annoying, please enter how many times you want the word to be printed, or something like that. I know this is very long, but yeah. So, and then we're going to ask for an integer value, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to call this value is equal to scn dot next int, just like that. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it. Ooh, I'm not done. But anyway, let me just show you what's going to happen. So it's going to ask us to enter the number. That's it. And then it's going to stop because we haven't done anything inside this loop. So what I want to do is, instead of saying while I is less than or equal to 20, I want to say while I is less than or equal to value. So whatever the number is that we're going to be getting here, that is our limit, right? And what we're going to print out here is I. No, we're not going to print out I. We're going to print out word. Sorry. So we're going to print out word. And we're going to run this. And here we want to enter, let's say we want to enter Josh. I don't know, Josh comes to mind. It's very easy to type, so that's why I keep thinking of Josh. And the limit can be 5, and it's going to print out Josh 5 times, just like that. As you can see, we get Josh five times. So that's basically, and if you don't believe that it's printed out 5 times, I'm just gonna concatenate it with the value, or like with the particular index, or with the particular value of the loop, or the particular iteration. And we're gonna say Josh again, and now we want the limit to be 4. It's gonna print out Josh 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with loops, and we're gonna be working with them all the time. So yeah, you're gonna enjoy working with them. This is the basis. This is the basis of your programming. If you don't understand how loops work, you need to understand how they work, because they're very important. Every aspect of programming actually that we're going to be going through is important, so you can't let anything slide. Next, we're going to be covering while loops. So it's a different type of loop, but they do the same thing. It's just that a lot of people prefer to use this loop when handling certain problems, and people prefer to use while loops to address other types of issues. So we're going to be talking about that later on.